there were, on one occasion, the president had passed a few anti-Semitic remarks, and the previous Mugabe, yes, and we decided not to let him get away with that one, and we requested a interview with him, and his press secretary or whoever it was said that he was very tied up, but he would definitely see us. And this dragged on and on and on and on until it virtually became irrelevant. And by then I was ready to leave in any case. A few years had dragged by. So he obviously didn't want to get involved in that sort of thing. But there was no real anti-Semitism caused. There was the big fire in Bulawayo at the shul, as you will remember, when the shul burnt down, and there were a couple of letters in the Bulawayo Chronicle stating that the fire had been set by the Jewish community themselves, and that they had been storing petrol there, which of course was in short supply, and that had set off the blaze, and that there were other things going on, and Bulawayo got hold of me and said they were going to do something about it. But I wrote a letter. I told them to hang on. I wrote a letter to the Bulawayo Chronicle and denied all this nonsense, and pointed out that the writing was a lot of rubbish, and that the matter ceased right thereafter. So that was one of the few occasions. But no, there was no real problems from that side of it. There was one other thing which had nothing to do with the Board of Deputies as such. That was a time when the ambassador of Israel contacted Herman and I, who we were still living in Kadoma at the time. Gershon Gunn was the ambassador, the first ambassador to the country, and asked whether we would host a Israeli doctor who was involved in the eye clinic. He was an ophthalmic surgeon, and they were going to operate on many Africans in the rural backwoods there, so to speak, and restore their eyesight. Anyway, nothing. He was going to be based in Chigutu, which used to be Hartley, and if we could host and entertain him from time to time. Anyway, nothing came of that, and when I inquired after some months as to when this doctor and his train was finally going to arrive, I was told the whole setup had been aborted because this was an Israeli scheme, and the government had requested that Israel would not be mentioned at all, and that the whole medical setup should be called an international medical scheme, which the Israelis turned down. They said if it's not under the Israeli banner, which it fully was, they would pull out. So the government said, well, that's fine, pull out. So I guess a couple of thousand people never regained their eyesight because of politics. So that's the sort of things we came up across from time to time. But nothing particular has been happening since, as far as I know, from that side. They've got so many problems in Zimbabwe that they haven't got time to play around with outside politics as such. 2 years ago, 2013. Very depressing. Very depressing. Everything has run down to a large extent. This applies to the whole country, of course, not only just to Kadoma, but it's disappointing to see a lot of course, most of the farmers have disappeared. In fact, virtually all of the farmers disappeared. The population has decreased. The only thing we did find that really looked spick and span was the high school, the Jameson High School, which at one stage was ranked as one of the top government schools in the country, and probably still is, judging from its appearance. It's a synagogue as well, and there's no one left there, as I mentioned earlier. And Gweru, Kwekwe, I would say, probably had about 60, 70, same number as and there was a rabbi or reverend engaged in the 1960s or late 50s perhaps, a Reverend Ehrman from Israel, and his wife and daughter, and they were stationed in Kwekwe and came down to Gatooma alternate Shabbases, and then went over to Gwelo at that time as well. But as the population dwindled and funds became less and children left, became fewer, that scheme finished up, and I think he must have been there about roughly 3 years. I don't think so. I think Gatooma had, as far as I know, Gatooma had more Sephardis than Kwekwe or Gwelo ever did, as far as I recall. I've written a short history of the Gatooma Hebrew congregation, which I hope to. It was actually written for the Rhodesian Zionist magazine many years ago. Yeah, it's taken from there. Quite right. And Barney Katz was still editor in Bulawayo of that publication. And I can update it. In fact, I have sort of updated it. Excuse me. And would like to let you have details of that as well, to bring it really up to date. Yes. Yeah. And but the other congregations went the same way, and more or less fizzled out completely. Good. Well, thank you for having me on this program.